Hi everybody, I'm Dave Thomas, and today I am building the Estes Gnome model rocket kit. This kit goes together in about half an hour or less and can be flown about an hour after that, essentially as soon as the glue dries. Also, this is a very similar kit to the Up Aerospace Space Loft kit, which is pretty much based on the same plans. It just has a little bit different fins and nose cone. So if you've built the Space Loft, this will seem really, really familiar to you. Okay, like with any kit, we want to make sure we have all the parts here. So we have a pre-chromed body tube here, a fin assembly and the main part of the nose cone, and then inside this small parts package here, gently and carefully open that up. Don't want to cut anything inside there. Okay, we have the base for the nose cone. This is the shock cord mount and launch lug. We have a small streamer, self-stick decal, shock cord, and mini engine clip. Okay, and according to the instructions, that's everything we need. So I'm going to clear this away and we will get started right away. According to our instruction sheet, our first task is to assemble the nose cone. And so we'll need the nose cone itself and then this base piece. And this is just going to fit in here and be glued together. Okay, so before you do that, just make sure there's nothing that might interfere with that. Sometimes you might get a little bit of excess plastic hanging out of here. And for this, you're going to need some plastic model cement or super glue. And so I'm just going to open this up. Make sure you do this on a surface that you don't mind getting gluey in case some of this overflows or otherwise spills. Alright, and what I'm going to do is put a small thin film right inside here. I'm going to use the tip of the glue itself as an applicator there. You don't want this too thick or it may melt the nose cone. All right, and then just put the base piece on there, give it a twist back and forth a little bit to seat it into the glue. Hold that for about 15 seconds or so, and then we'll just set it aside to continue drying. Okay, for this next part, we're going to draw a line along the length of the body tube. And traditionally, we do this by putting it in a door frame or a window frame and using the corner edges in there to draw this. For this video, I'm going to use this line drawing guide that Estes makes. Alright, and so this acts as a door frame for me. And so here, I'm just going to take a pencil and lightly draw a line all the way up. Okay, so you can just barely see it there. It's actually more of an indentation than a line, but that works. Okay, now we need to look along the body tube here. Okay, and we're going to get the engine hook. Alright, and it's going to be mounted down here like this. Okay, so what we need to do is make a couple of markings for this. Okay, so pick one end of the tube to be the rear or aft end, and we're going to make a mark. So find that line we had earlier. It's almost too faint. There we go. And I'm not sure if that's showing up in the video, but there's my line right there. Okay. I tend to do things in metric, but it also shows you imperial units here. Alright, so we need one line here, so I'm just going to make a little cross line at 9 millimeters from the bottom of the tube, or the aft end of the tube. And then the second one is at 38 millimeters, or 3.8 centimeters. So that's going to be right here. Alright, and then we're going to have another cross line at the forward end that's also at 38 millimeters. So that one goes right here. Alright, now, just as a precaution, I'm going to write aft on the back end of the tube there, and this will be covered by the fin assembly later on, so you won't see it there eventually. Alright, so now we need to make two slots at those 38 millimeter marks. So one right here, and these just need to be about 3 millimeters long, or about 1/8 of an inch for the non-metrically inclined. Just be careful you don't cut yourself here. Okay, now at the aft one, this is where the engine clip goes in. So the end of the engine clip that just has this right angle in it, this is going to go into this slot here, and then hang down like that. And then the fin assembly here, this is going to fit over that. Okay, so on one part of the assembly it's got this notch cut out in it, so we just slide this down carefully down along the tube here. Now I've not applied any glue to this yet. I'm just fitting this by friction. There's a lot of friction. This is really tight. Okay, so then the slot goes right over that engine clip, and then I pull that down to there. Okay, and I'm going to push it up just a little bit. Okay, so that 9 centimeter mark there, it's getting a little bit covered up. So it's right there. So I'm just going to make a little extension of that right there. Okay, so that when we actually glue this, this will come down, and we're going to stop it right there. And that's going to put the edge of the body tube even with the base of the fins there. Alright, so my little aft marking there isn't completely covered up. If you want yours to be, just bring it up a little bit farther up here. So hopefully you're watching this video before you actually start building. Alright, so now I'm going to push this back up a little bit. Okay, and about halfway between the two marks there, I'm going to put some more rubber cement on this, or excuse me, plastic cement. Alright, now you don't want to hit the clip itself, but here I'm just going to put a thin bead of glue all the way around that. Alright, and you don't need a lot. If you put too much glue on this, it's going to make it really gooey, and it's all going to come out the bottom. Alright, so now I'm going to push this down gently. Again, I'm going to come back till I'm just at my mark. Back a little if I need to there. Alright, so there I'm at my mark, and the aft end of my body tube is just a little bit above the base of the fins there. Okay, so that's how it should look. And this needs to dry for, let's say, about 5 to 10 minutes before we go on to the next part. Now my glue is still drying, but I did want to bring up a point here. If you've built model rockets before, you're probably used to having at minimum a thrust ring or an engine block in the engine mount here. In this particular case, the right angle that is bent into the engine clip actually acts as the thrust ring as well. So the motor, when it's installed, will not go past that, and that will then impart the energy from the motor to the rest of the rocket. Okay, so just if you're wondering where the thrust ring is, it doesn't have one. Our next job is to install the shock cord. And again, this is also going to be a little bit different from other model rockets that you may have built. So here I'm going to widen out the slot that we put on the forward end just a little bit. And what we want here is that slot needs to be as wide as the shock cord. So mine's a little bit small yet, and I'm just going to open that up and do this evenly across the line. All right, and I'm just going to kind of move this back and forth a little bit to make that wide enough. Now here the trick is to stick this in, and then we're going to pull it through the front. All right, so here you can use a pencil, either a mechanical one like this or just a sharpened wood pencil, and that'll get us started here. So we're just going to poke that in. All right, if I can get, if you just see down there, okay, it's coming up. You may need to use the pencil to grab it. So I'm just going to keep doing this. Now once it's in there, sometimes you can use your finger to just keep pushing it in, almost to the top. There we go. And so it's going to come out here like that. Now here's where you need to be careful. Okay, so we're going to pull this through. And we want to leave now about 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch hanging out here. And it's better to overestimate rather than underestimate that. So about that far. Okay, and now this ring, if you look at it on the side, it's got a taper to it. So the front side of this has that taper that goes toward the inside. Okay, and what I'm going to do is that taper is going to be facing forward on the rocket. So it's facing forward here. I'm going to snake this end of the shock cord through. All right, and then the other thing here is that there is a little slot cut on the inside of the ring. That is going to go over the shock cord that's hanging out here yet. Okay, so if we look at it from this direction, all right, you can see the slot there. That's going to fit over this. The other thing to make sure of is that this hole here, which is 1/2 the launch lug, needs to line up with the hole back here on the fin assembly. And so you can just kind of sight through these and make sure that they're in line with each other and with the body tube. And as long as you keep that slot in the right place and you've marked your slot here correctly, they should line up automatically. And here, just like we did with the fins, okay, as I've moved this up above where it'll be when it's finished, and now I'm just going to, again, put a light bead of glue around this at a point that will still be covered, or mostly covered when we push it down. Okay. And I'm just going to move this over, right, and this is going to trap the shock cord there. Okay, and now just to check again, make sure that these are still aligned. It's actually a little bit off. I'm just going to give it a nudge. Okay, that looks pretty good there. Okay, and once again, we'll let this dry. While the glue is drying on the launch lug anchor there, we'll go ahead and take the streamer, go ahead and unfold that, find a place about 1/3 of the way down from the tip of the shock cord. All right, and just place your streamer there. Then take a piece of transparent tape that's just a little bit wider than the streamer. And there are a couple of ways you can do this. What I prefer to do is first put the sticky side up. I'm going to bring the streamer about halfway up the tape. All right, and just press that down. And then I'm going to take the shock cord here, put it right at the edge of the streamer, and then I'm going to fold the tape over that. Okay, so it should trap the shock cord in there between the streamer and the tape. Okay, and then you can take either a hobby knife or some scissors and carefully remove the excess tape there. Be very careful that you don't cut into the streamer or the shock cord. Okay, once we have the fins and the launch lug in place, we no longer need our line, and so you can try to erase this. And I said on mine, mostly just made a depression into that chrome decal. It didn't really write on it, and there's not much you can do about that, so if you just leave it that way. But if you do have pencil showing here, you can erase it off. Okay, and now we're going to need our nose cone that we had set aside earlier. And here we're going to pass the free end of the shock cord through the eyelet at the base there. And trying to keep as much of the shock cord conserved as you can, go ahead and just tie a double knot here, or 2 half hitches. All right, and just pull that down good and tight. Okay, now we want as little as possible over here. The problem is that if you have this much hanging out when we go to put the nose cone in, this is going to try and get trapped between the shoulder of the nose cone and the body tube. And if that happens during a launch, it's a good chance that the streamer will not get ejected properly. So what I like to do is come down, once that is good and tight, is cut off everything but about 5 millimeters there, about 1/4 of an inch. Now if you want to, you can also put just a little tiny dab of white glue or wood glue on the knot to help keep that from coming undone. See how it's trying to do there? Okay, but if you get it good and tight on there from both directions and then test it there, you don't necessarily have to do that step. Okay, but I'm always a little bit paranoid about these coming undone. So I'm just going to take a little bit of white glue here, and just a little tiny drop. It does not take a lot. Okay, put that right in the knot, and then just use your finger to work it into the folds. Okay, and then we'll let this set aside to dry for a little while so we don't get that white glue stuck on something else. Okay, our last piece to put together here is simply the decals. So these are self-stick, and if you want to go and use the recommended layout here, then the actual gnome will come down here just above the fin assembly, and then the Estes sticker here will go just below the shock cord anchor and launch lug. You don't have to do them this way. If you want, you could do this as a wrap. Okay, so you could wrap the gnome sticker around the body and then put the Estes wherever you like. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go with the recommended. Now it's best when you do this, handle it only by the edges. And also wash your hands really well before you handle this. This will help decrease fingerprints. So you can see there's a little bit of a fingerprint there already. And it doesn't matter where this goes, although I do recommend you not put it on the same side as the launch lug. So I'm going to do it opposite the launch lugs. Okay, and I'm just going to lightly put this in place first, like that, and see if that's relatively straight. If it isn't, you just lift it up gently and reposition. Okay, that looks good enough for me. And then just smooth all the air bubbles out. All right, once you've got this smoothed down, it does not come up very easily without ruining the finish. Okay, and then we've got our little Estes sticker here, a little tiny one. There we go. Okay, and again, going by the recommended layout, I'm going to put this right here. Alright, so structurally, that's the entire rocket there. I'm going to let this dry for a full hour before launching it, just to make sure that we don't lose pieces during launch. And then after that hour is up, I'm going to come back and show you how to load this and get it ready for launch. Okay, once the rocket has completely dried, again, that usually takes about an hour, you can prep this for launch. And so the first thing we're going to do is fold the streamer. And all I'm doing is just taking one end and folding it up to the other. All right, and then I take that fold and fold it up. And then take that fold and fold it up until we get a nice little package here, and then you kind of roll up the rest of that. All right, so just like that. Now, depending on how dexterous you are, you can either hold on to it like this, or you can do this part second. Okay, that's just how it's going to roll up. It's really easy to do. All right, this is recovery wadding, and it looks like toilet tissue, although it's treated with a flame retardant. And this is going to help keep the streamer from melting or catching fire when the ejection charge in the motor goes off. Now, since this is such a narrow rocket, you only really need about a half of one of these squares. Now, you might need two halves here, and I'll show you why. But we're going to take this, and in fact, I'm going to tear this down again. All right, so I'm going to roll this or crumple this loosely into a ball. Like that. You don't want it really tight. Okay, I'm just going to stick that down inside, and I'm going to use my pencil to force it down. Now, if it's taking a lot of force to get that down there, then take it back out, make it smaller. Okay, it needs to be able to move easily while at the same time forming a good seal along the inside of the body tube. Okay, also make sure you don't get the shock cord tangled up or in between the little bits of wadding there. All right, so it looks like 2 small squares is enough. I'm just going to come back, refold this, and I say it doesn't take very long at all, so if you had to put it down or refold it, not a big deal. All right, and once more, take that last bit and roll it up as tight as you can get it there. Okay, and now I'm just going to stuff this down inside, and the shock cord is just going to go along with it here. So once you've got that, then you can take a pencil here or something similar and get the loops of the shock cord down in there. There we go. Okay, and again, the key thing is here, we don't want any of the shock cord to get up in here between the body tube and the nose. Okay, and then just push that in. Now we're going to do a test here. If you shake it vigorously, the nose cone should not come off. At the same time, it should be easily removable. All right, now if it's too loose that it's actually shaking loose, just take a little tiny bit of masking tape and do maybe 1/3 of the circumference here. Don't wrap it all the way around yet. Okay, start with a little bit, see if that's enough. Add some more if you need to. Now if it's really tight and that's just not coming loose at all, Again, check and make sure that you're not catching some shock cord in there. Okay, but if your shock cord's okay, then what you can do is take some medium grit sandpaper, like about 100 to 150 grit, and just lightly sand around the shoulder, test fit it. If it's still too tight, do it some more. Okay, and then if you over sand it, then you go back to the masking tape. Okay, but I found usually these things work fairly well right out of the box. Okay. So then on the other side, once you're ready to actually fly this, you're going to need a motor. Now this uses Estes, what they call their mini engines. Generically they're called 13 millimeter engines because that's the diameter of the motor. And I'm using motor and engine here interchangeably. Okay. One end has a nozzle, that should be on the aft. The other end will just have an open hole there, and you can see down inside, that's a little clay plug that covers the ejection charge. And so here, if you just bring this in an angle like this, it should push right in, and then clip right there. So this keeps the motor from coming out. Now if you do need to take the motor out, just move that clip aside, pull it out like that. Okay. Next we need to put in a starter or igniter. And normally we do this at the launch range. So you would normally not store a rocket with a motor and an igniter in it. But for the purposes of this video, I'm doing it indoors here. My personal preference is to have my igniter leads, so these parts right here, opposite my launch lug. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in until I feel it touch the inside of the motor. And now I'm just going to bend this 90 degrees, so it's hanging like that. And then included with the motors are these little plugs. Now make sure there's no excess plastic on either side there, because they usually come like this. Okay, so you need to remove that little bit of plastic there, and if you have the base there, you may have this little flap as well. All right, so you should only have this much to it. All right, now my igniter fell out. I'll put that back in. Okay, and then this plug simply goes straight in to the nozzle. All right, so if you got it like that, and then you just push it straight in, not at an angle or anything. And this is going to hold the tip of the starter or igniter, synonymous for the same thing, up against the propellant there. And then we just move these apart. Okay, and then when we're ready to launch, the launch rod of the launcher will fit through these, holding it upright. And then there will be two electrical clips at the launcher, and those will be attached here. And the idea there is you just want to make sure that they don't touch. Okay, so that when the current goes through, it goes through the igniter, heats up the little coil on that, that starts the motor, and that gives us liftoff. And then as the rocket's propellant and smoke charge run out, the ejection charge fires, that pushes the nose cone and the streamer out, and this whole thing should come back down to earth gently enough that all we have to do is repack the streamer, put in a new motor, and we can fly it again. Okay? With that, I hope you had a great time building this. As I said, it goes together fairly easily. Have a great launch, a safe recovery, and do come back and check out some of my other videos.